stopped, and we were all there. It was just a tremendous thing, and really a great opportunity to be there and to see that. A discussion about Putu is virtually impossible without the context of Neni. The two of them were so intertwined. Neni was really Neni was the driving force behind everything that was done, and Putu allowed himself to be a vehicle for it. And he made very significant sacrifices in his life for us. Very significant, a lot of which I understand a lot more as an adult than what I did as a kid. For me personally, and everyone will talk about something else, but for me personally, there were two major sacrifices that Putu made. First, when I was a little kid, maybe 5 years old, Neni took us to the country for the summer. My mother had to work and go to the city for the week, and Neni came up for the summer, and Putu was alone in the city. It's it's one thing we do that now for our kids, but how do you do that for someone else's kids? We were great nephews. And it was me and Brandy with Neni in the country for 2 or 3 summers. And then when I got older, when I was 17, and I came to New York and went to college, that's where I lived, by Neni and Putu, for 6 or 7 years. It's very hard to have somebody else in your house, especially you don't have kids, and so I was there for 6 or 7 years together, and we had such great times during those years. I would go with Putu to check the oil burners again and again, and we would buy pants in the right place, and sometimes I went on Shabbos to the shul that Yankel alluded to, and made a $5 donation, which was the average. But really, one of my favorite memories is coming home from school, and 10 o'clock, this was when I was already learning, and I'd come back from night Seder, and right in the bed with them in the middle, and just watch the news with them. And it was just a wonderful feeling. And so over the years, the last few years, as Putu got sicker with Parkinson's and all bunch of doctors, Dr. Stein when he fell and he broke his shoulder, and Dr. Kielsen, going with Putu was never a burden. It was the most pleasurable thing to do. It was just, I wanted so much to do for him. I can't even explain why. It's just something that you feel very, very much you want to be there for somebody. And it was the same for all of us. And that's why, Yankel, it's so easy for us to really have given ourselves for Putu, because we have such a deep, deep feeling of appreciation for him. And he loved us, as Mr. Rosenberg said. He really did love us. Putu had a special way of showing it, but a lot of times, most recently in the hospitals, Putu gave out a lot of kisses lately. And he would show, just last week when I went to visit him, he grabbed me, gave me 3 kisses on my cheek. He was so happy. I think he realized how much we really wanted to be there with him. And it was only us that, he was very picky when Neni was first had a stroke and went to the hospital for the first few weeks. He was very particular in who he wanted, to sleep over in the house on Shabbos, and I had great times there with him on Shabbos. We would sing Shalom Aleichem together, and Putu would sing, and then we would have a sleep fest the whole Shabbos, where we would outdo each other with how long we slept. But by far, I have to say that Putu's favorite was really Shimi in the last, certainly in the last few months. Shimi was the only one that was able to calm Putu down, was the only one that was able to really bring him to a good place. And Shimi is named after Putu's father, and that was always very special to Putu. and Shimmy married Fagi, who's named after, well, who has the name of Putu's mother. So Putu's parents were Shimmy and Fagi. And so it was a very special thing for Putu. And everybody in our family saw how Shimmy just gave up everything in the last few months. Sukkot, remember we got the call on Sukkot, and you had to run to Borough Park, and the Friday nights, going back even years of emergencies that came up, Shimmy was the only one that could really be there. And even this past Shabbos, how Shimmy had to go there in the middle of Shabbos. And Shimmy, you continue to give everything you have to Nani and Putu, and now even more with Nani, our efforts are going to be more concentrated now. Putu was always terrified of this day. This was something that was a very, very, very scary thing for him. When he heard of friends that passed away, you could just see in his eyes that he was terrified of this. And really, it's something that we all had in our heads and dreaded, that one day we're going to come to this. And so, in closing, really with Putu's passing, it's the beginning of a process of passing along and moving the torch along to the next generation. Mami and Yankel carry that very well, and they've been in that role anyway, but now it's more of a certified role of as being the senior leaders of our family. Thank you for coming today.
I just want to make a mention, my brother Sholi is in South Africa on a mission. He's in Mechilach, and he goes there once a year to help special education there. I don't know if he was even notified yet. We tried, but I'm sure when Sholi mentioned Yiddish and myself, he meant Sholi too, but he's not here, so he didn't see him. I would like to continue fast forward because we got to be in the airport shortly. I would like to ask now Shai, we call him the rabbi in our family, to come up and say a couple of words of answer. Shai.
Putu used to joke with us. He asked me a couple of years ago, my brother-in-law used to go to his mother's kever on a yearly basis to daven by the kever twice a year. One year he said to me, he said, make sure your brother-in-law has all the paperwork for the Shabbat, make sure he has whatever he needs. So I said, Putu, what's the rush? He says, you know, I'm very impatient, and I'm going to be waiting in the coffin, I'm going to be waiting ready to finish, and I don't want to wait any extra. So that's why I want all the paperwork done. But in honor of Kursa Tov, Putu, we're going to make you wait a little bit longer. There was once another Mordechai, not Shmuel Mordechai, but Mordechai. And Mordechai also had a close relative that was the Yisayma, that was an orphan. And that Mordechai took his orphan relative into his house, and from that grew the great Yeshua, eventually that saved him and Klal Yisrael. As a payback, small token of appreciation. So Uncle Yankel mentioned before about dedication. Whatever dedication, small token of dedication we can show to Putu and Nani is only a small token of appreciation for what they did from that young age when my mother was 3 years old and Yisayma, for what they did for her and the stories my mother would tell us. Shimmy will be marked more on stories in general. How Nani and Putu, before they had any money, before they had anything, when they scraped whatever they could so that my mother and Yankel could have meat and eat better so they can be healthy. Gemara says that Rabbi Shubal Levi, great-grandson of Rabbi Shubal Levi, had a little peek at what it looks like up in the Olam HaElyon. And when he came back, he said, he saw a very interesting thing. He saw that Elyonim Lamata Tachtonim Lamala. That means people in this world who were assumed to be greater in the Olam HaEmes, they were on a lesser level. And some people who in this world were on a lesser, simplistic level, in the Olam HaEmes, were on a higher level. How is this? The Rambam mentions, he speaks about Bezin Shel Maila and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu weighs a person's mitzvahs, his good deeds, and his averis, his bad deeds. And the Rambam explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will measure what outweighs a person's good deeds or bad deeds. And the Rambam says that this calculation of who is a tzaddik and what makes a good deed greater, that is something that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows how to calculate that. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can calculate that. Why is that? We know there are big mitzvahs, there are big averis. Why can we not realize at least the rough calculation? We'll talk about a little bit about the life of Putu. Perhaps we'll understand a little bit why that's so. Putu's Bar Mitzvah Parsha was Parsha Kiseitze. That was also the last Parsha of his life. If we look in Parshas Kiseitze, we find